The breaking point. The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished metal and crystalline walls. Representatives from 47 different species sat in curved rows that spiraled toward the center, where a single podium stood bathed in soft blue light. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked slowly toward that podium, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber despite the acoustic dampening fields. Behind her, Admiral Marcus Torres watched from the human observation gallery. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his hands gripped the railing tight enough to leave marks in the metal. This was humanity's final chance to gain equal standing in the Galactic Assembly, and everyone knew it. Sarah reached the podium and activated the translation matrix. When she spoke, her words would be understood by every species present, though she wondered if understanding the words would be enough to bridge the gap between human ambition and alien prejudice. "Honored representatives," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I stand before you today to request what should have been granted long ago. Humanity seeks full membership in the Galactic Assembly, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails." A sound like grinding stone filled the air as Overlord Krexnov of the Drakmari shifted in his massive chair, the reptilian's yellow eyes fixed on Sarah with barely concealed disdain. His translator converted his hissing speech into measured words. "The young species speaks of rights," Krexnov said, his forked tongue flicking between razor-sharp teeth. "What rights have you earned beyond what we have already granted? You have been permitted to establish colonies on 12 worlds. You trade freely in 37 systems. Your people serve admirably as technicians and laborers throughout the galaxy. Why do you demand more?" Sarah kept her expression neutral, though Admiral Torres could see the tension in her shoulders. For 3 years, she had endured these sessions, where humanity's contributions were dismissed as mere service rather than partnership. "With respect, Overlord Krexnov," Sarah replied, "we are not servants seeking promotion. We are a spacefaring civilization requesting the same voice in galactic affairs as any other member species." The chamber filled with a sound like singing crystal, as Zethkari Prime Minister Veltar communicated her thoughts. The Zethkari resembled living gemstones, their bodies composed of organized crystalline matrices that could reshape at will. Veltar's form currently resembled a tall, elegant humanoid made of blue sapphire. "The human perspective is limited." Veltar's harmonic voice resonated through the translation system. "Your species has existed for mere thousands of years. The Zethkari have maintained stellar civilization for over 50 millennia. The Drakmari have ruled their empire for 30,000 years. Even the youngest full-member species, the aquatic, Velmari, have 3 times your experience in space." "Experience should not be the only measure of worth," Sarah countered. "In the past 50 years, human engineers have improved efficiency in mining operations by an average of 300%. Human agricultural techniques have ended famine on 17 worlds. Human diplomatic intervention has prevented 4 major conflicts from escalating to war." A sound like a million insects buzzing filled the air as Hive Queen Zistha expressed her thoughts. The insectoid leader's massive form dominated her section of the chamber, her forearms gesturing in complex patterns while dozens of smaller drones orbited her like living satellites. "The humans make useful tools." Zistha's collective voice emerged from thousands of throats speaking in unison. "But tools do not make decisions for those who wield them. Your people excel at implementation, not leadership. This is your natural role in the galactic order." Admiral Torres felt his jaw clench. 3 years of negotiations, and still the aliens saw humanity as nothing more than convenient servants. He watched Sarah take a deep breath before responding. "Our natural role is what we make it," Sarah said, her voice carrying a harder edge now. "Humans didn't evolve to serve others. We evolved to survive, to adapt, and to thrive wherever we find ourselves. We've proven our worth 1,000 times over, yet you continue to treat us as junior partners at best." Overlord Krexnov's laughter was like the sound of rocks grinding together. "Survival and adaptation. Every species in this chamber has survived, long enough to reach the stars. What makes humans special?" Sarah looked around the vast chamber, meeting the gaze of representatives from dozens of species. Some looked curious, others bored, most simply dismissive. She made her decision. "What makes us special," Sarah said quietly, "is what we're willing to do when our contributions aren't valued." She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a single sheet of polymer paper. The document looked insignificant in the enormous chamber, but Admiral Torres recognized it immediately. It was the formal withdrawal notice they had prepared but never expected to use. "The human delegation formally withdraws from negotiations for full assembly membership," Sarah announced. "Furthermore, we are implementing Protocol Starfall, effective immediately." Confusion rippled through the chamber. Most species had never heard of Protocol Starfall, but Prime Minister Veltar's crystalline form flickered with sudden concern. "Ambassador Chen." Veltar's harmonic voice carried a note of alarm. "What is Protocol Starfall?" Sarah looked directly at the Zeth-Kari representative. "It's what happens when humans decide we're no longer welcome somewhere." Without another word, Sarah turned and walked away from the podium. Her footsteps echoed in the suddenly silent chamber, as 47 species tried to process what they had just witnessed. Admiral Torres was already moving before Sarah reached the observation gallery. As senior military observer, he had prepared for this possibility, though he had hoped it would never come to pass. He activated his secure communicator and spoke 2 words that would change the galaxy forever. "Execute Starfall." Across human space, the message was received and acknowledged within minutes. On mining worlds, research stations, diplomatic outposts, and trade hubs throughout the galaxy, humans began implementing plans they had refined over 3 years of failed negotiations. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, Chief Engineer Patricia Valdez received the coded transmission while overseeing the installation of new atmospheric processors. The processors represented a breakthrough in terraforming technology that would have taken other species decades to develop. Patricia smiled grimly as she input her authorization codes. "All human personnel report to evacuation stations," she announced over the facility's communication system. "We're going home." Her Drakmari supervisor, Subcommander Thexval, looked up from his monitoring station with confusion. "Engineer Valdez, what is the meaning of this? We have quotas to meet." "Check your employment contracts, Subcommander," Patricia replied as she began downloading critical systems data to portable storage devices. "All human technical staff are contract employees, not indentured servants. Our contracts include a 30-day termination clause for any reason." Thexval's scales flushed with alarm as he accessed the legal databases. The contracts were indeed terminable, something the Drakmari had agreed to without much thought years earlier. They had assumed humans would never voluntarily leave such lucrative positions. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as humans began the largest coordinated evacuation in galactic history. Dr. Michael Harrison had been leading xenobiology research on 3 different worlds for the past 4 years. His discoveries had revolutionized understanding of how life adapted to different planetary conditions. Now he carefully destroyed all his research notes while his alien colleagues watched in growing panic. "Dr. Harrison, you cannot simply delete years of research," pleaded his Zeth-Kari assistant, Resonance Prime Clarity. "This work belongs to the galactic scientific community." "This work belongs to whoever did it," Michael replied as he wiped the last database. "Check the research agreements. All discoveries made by human scientists remain property of the Earth Science Consortium unless specifically transferred. Since we're no longer part of the galactic community, the transfer agreements are void." On the trade station, Nexus 7, Captain Jennifer Walsh supervised the loading of the last human cargo vessel. For 2 years, she had coordinated supply runs to 43 different worlds, managing a logistics network that kept entire sectors of the galaxy functioning smoothly. Now she was taking her ships and going home. Station Master Kelthar, a member of the aquatic Velmari species, floated in his environmental suit as he tried to understand what was happening. "Captain Walsh, you cannot simply leave. The supply contracts are fulfilled through the end of this month," Jennifer interrupted. "After that, you'll need to find new suppliers. I recommend the Zeth-Kari Consortium. They're only about 40% more expensive than we are, and their delivery times are merely twice as long." The true scope of humanity's departure didn't become apparent until the second week. What had initially seemed like isolated incidents was revealed as a coordinated exodus that spanned the entire galaxy. Humans weren't just leaving their jobs and contracts. They were disappearing entirely. Ships that had served as the backbone of interstellar freight networks vanished from space. Lanes, research facilities that had operated continuously for decades went dark. Mining operations that had revolutionized resource extraction ground to a halt. Most disturbing of all, no one could locate where the humans were going. Long-range sensors tracked human vessels leaving their assigned systems, but the ships seemed to vanish once they reached the edges of charted space. Communication attempts received only automated responses. Humanity is currently unavailable for consultation. Please contact us when you're ready to offer genuine partnership. In his private chambers aboard the assembly station, Prime Minister Veltar studied intelligence reports with growing alarm. The Zethkari had always prided themselves on their ability to predict and plan for future events. Their crystalline minds could process vast amounts of data and extrapolate probable outcomes with remarkable accuracy. But they had never anticipated this. Analysis complete, Veltar's aide Harmony of Purpose reported. Human departure affects 14,847 separate operations across 2,341 star systems. Economic impact estimates range from severe disruption to complete collapse depending on the sector. Veltar's crystalline form pulsed with concerned energy patterns. How long before we can replace their contributions? Conservative estimates suggest between 15 and 40 years, assuming we can reverse engineer their techniques. Some human innovations may be impossible to replicate with our current understanding. The situation was even worse than most species realized. Humans hadn't just been workers and technicians. They had been the invisible foundation that kept galactic civilization running smoothly. Their adaptability and problem-solving abilities had made them invaluable in ways that more rigid alien minds couldn't fully appreciate. Admiral Torres stood in the command center of the human evacuation fleet, watching status reports flow in from across the galaxy. Operation Starfall was proceeding ahead of schedule, with 97% of human personnel successfully extracted from alien space. Final departure window opens in 6 hours, reported Captain Diana Joe from her position at the communication station. All civilian transports are accounted for. Military escorts are in position. What about our destination? Torres asked. Joe smiled. The Andromeda Preparation Fleet reports successful establishment of preliminary bases in 17 systems. The new worlds are impressive, Admiral. Better than anything we're leaving behind. Torres nodded with satisfaction. While humans had spent 3 years trying to gain respect from the Galactic Assembly, they had also been secretly exploring the void between galaxies. Human ships, with their superior range and adaptability, had discovered something the other species never suspected. Andromeda was full of habitable worlds, and they were unoccupied. As the last human ships prepared to leave known space forever, Sarah Chen sent one final message to the Galactic Assembly. It was brief and to the point. To the representatives of 47 species who found humanity useful but not worthy of respect, you had your chance to be our partners. Instead, you chose to be our former colleagues. Don't follow us. You wouldn't like what you'd find. The message was transmitted just as the last human vessel disappeared into the darkness between stars, leaving behind a galaxy that was about to learn the true cost of taking humanity for granted. The reckoning 8 months had passed since the last human ship vanished into the void between galaxies, and the Galactic Assembly was dying a slow, inexorable death. What had initially been dismissed as a temporary tantrum by an immature species had revealed itself as something far more devastating: the careful, methodical extraction of the very foundation upon which modern galactic civilization rested. Overlord Krexnov stood in the ruins of what had once been the Drakmari Empire's most productive mining complex. Twisted metal and broken machinery stretched across the horizon of Zarian Prime, a world that had produced enough rare minerals to supply 12 sectors. Without human engineers to maintain the delicate extraction systems, The entire operation had collapsed in spectacular fashion. "Report," Krexnov commanded his aide, Sub-Commander Velnex. "Minimal recovery, my lord," Velnex replied, his own scales dulled with exhaustion. "Our engineers estimate it would take 40 years to rebuild the extraction systems to previous efficiency levels. That assumes we can obtain the necessary technology, which the humans took with them." Krexanov's claws scraped against the twisted metal of what had once been a processing plant. The Drakmari had ruled their empire for 30,000 years through military might and rigid hierarchy. They had conquered worlds, subjugated species, and built monuments that lasted millennia. But they had never learned to innovate, to adapt, to solve problems that couldn't be overcome through force. The humans had possessed those abilities in abundance. In just 5 years, they had transformed Drakmari mining operations from crude extraction to elegant efficiency. They had introduced concepts like preventive maintenance, adaptive systems, and predictive modeling that the Drakmari had never considered. Now, without those insights, the empire was crumbling. "What of the other worlds?" Krexnov asked. "Titan's glory has ceased all production. The atmospheric processors on New Conquest have failed, and the colony is being evacuated. The trade hub at Crimson Gate reports cargo throughput down 93%. Velnex's voice carried the weight of defeat. "My lord, without human logistics coordination, our supply chains have collapsed." Similar reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. On Crystalline Prime, the Zethkari homeworld, Prime Minister Veltar reviewed economic projections that defied her species' legendary ability to predict and plan for the future. "The situation exceeds our worst-case scenarios," reported her economic advisor, Pattern of Prosperity. "Human departure has created cascading failures throughout our commercial networks. Species that relied on human-improved processes are defaulting on trade agreements. Entire sectors are reverting to pre-contact economic levels." Veltar's crystalline form pulsed with frustrated energy patterns. The Zethkari had always prided themselves on their long-term thinking and careful planning. They could project economic trends across centuries and prepare for gradual changes in galactic civilization. But they had never planned for the sudden removal of the galaxy's most adaptable species. "What of our research initiatives?" Veltar asked. "Stagnant," Pattern of Prosperity admitted. 73% of our active research projects involved human collaboration. Without their innovative thinking, our scientists struggled to move beyond established theoretical frameworks. The research crisis was perhaps the most unexpected consequence of humanity's departure. For decades, aliens had viewed humans as useful, assistants in scientific endeavors, good at implementing ideas but lacking the intellectual sophistication for true theoretical work. The truth was more complex and more devastating. Dr. Resonance Prime Understanding, the Zethkari's leading theoretical physicist, floated in her research chamber surrounded by holographic displays showing failed experiments. For 6 months, she had been trying to continue work on quantum fold technology that she and her human partner, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, had been developing. "The equations are correct," Understanding muttered to herself, her crystalline form flickering with confused energy patterns. "The theoretical framework is sound, but something is missing." What was missing was the human ability to think outside established parameters. Dr. Rodriguez had possessed an intuitive understanding of how theoretical principles could be applied in unexpected ways. She had seen connections that eluded even the Zethkari's sophisticated minds. Without that perspective, Understanding found herself trapped in circular logic that led nowhere. The military situation was deteriorating even faster than the economic collapse. The Void Hunters, an aggressive species from outside the galaxy, had been testing galactic defenses for years. For the past 8 months, their probes had become increasingly bold and successful. Fleet Admiral Rextar of the Drakmari Defense Command studied tactical reports that painted an increasingly desperate picture. His flagship, the Crimson Conquest, hung in space above the contested world of Barrier 7, site of the latest Void Hunter incursion. "Enemy forces have breached the outer perimeter," reported his tactical officer. "Our standard defensive formations are ineffective against their adaptive tactics." Rexitar's claws drummed against his command chair. For 20 years, the Galactic defense strategy had relied heavily on human tactical innovations. Colonel Marcus Webb had developed flexible response protocols that could counter the Void Hunters' ability to adapt to conventional military strategies. Without those protocols, the galaxy's combined fleets were falling back on rigid formations that the enemy countered easily. "Implement Webb Protocol 7, Rexitar ordered. "Sir," his tactical officer replied with obvious discomfort, "our personnel are not trained in Webb protocols. The human tactical advisors took all training materials when they departed." Rexitar realized with growing horror that the Drekmari military had become dependent on human strategic thinking without ever truly understanding it. Colonel Webb's protocols required junior officers to make independent decisions based on rapidly changing battlefield conditions. The concept was alien to Drekmari military doctrine, which emphasized rigid chain of command and predetermined responses. The communication situation was even more dire. Hive Queen Zisitha's collective consciousness buzzed with frustrated harmonics as she tried to coordinate her empire's response to the crisis. The insectoid species communicated through complex pheromone signals that worked perfectly within their hive worlds but proved inadequate for interstellar coordination. For years, human communications specialists had served as intermediaries, translating not just language but concepts between species with fundamentally different thought processes. Dr. Sarah Kim had developed translation protocols that captured not just words but the underlying meaning and cultural context of interspecies communication. Without those protocols, miscommunications were causing diplomatic incidents across the galaxy. "The Zethkari reject our trade proposal," buzzed Zisitha's prime advisor. "They claim our terms are harmonically discordant and crystallographically incompatible." "What do those terms mean?" Zisitha demanded. "Unknown. Dr. Kim's cultural translation matrices are no longer available." The most desperate situation was on the research world of Prometheus Station, where a containment breach had released exotic matter from a failed experiment. Without human engineers to manage the crisis, the station's automated systems were failing one by one. Station Commander Keyleth, a member of the aquatic Velmari species, floated in his environmental suit as he reviewed increasingly desperate status reports. The exotic matter was consuming the station's hull at an accelerating rate, and none of the automated containment systems were functioning properly. "Estimated time to catastrophic failure?" Keyleth asked his science officer. 47 hours. "At current consumption rate," came the grim reply. "We need Dr. Michael Torres's containment protocols, but all human research data was encrypted and deleted before departure." Dr. Torres had spent 3 years developing containment systems for exotic matter research. His innovative approaches had made breakthrough discoveries possible while maintaining safety standards that other scientists had considered impossible. Now, without his expertise, the station faced complete destruction. Across the galaxy, similar crises multiplied as the true scope of human contributions became apparent. Humans hadn't just been useful workers. They had been the adaptive intelligence that allowed rigid alien civilizations to function in an ever-changing universe. The breaking point came during an emergency session of the Galactic Assembly. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Hall that now seemed empty and cold without human presence. Prime Minister Veltar called the session to order, her crystalline form pulsing with urgent energy patterns. "The situation is beyond critical," Veltar announced. "Economic collapse, military defeats, research stagnation, communication breakdowns. Every sector of galactic civilization is failing simultaneously." Overlord Krexnov's massive form dominated his section of the chamber. "The humans planned this," he growled. "They sabotaged our systems before departing." "No," Veltar replied, her harmonic voice carrying absolute certainty. "Analysis of all human activities shows no evidence of sabotage. They simply left. The failures are entirely our own." The truth was more humbling than sabotage would have been. Humans hadn't needed to sabotage anything. They had simply been so integral to galactic civilization that their absence created cascading failures throughout every system they had touched. Hive Queen Zisitha's collective voice filled the chamber. with urgent harmonics. We must contact them, offer them whatever they demand for their return. We have tried, Veltar admitted. All communication attempts receive the same automated response. Humanity is currently unavailable. Please contact us when you're ready to offer genuine partnership. Then we offer genuine partnership, Kreksnov declared. Full assembly membership, equal voting rights, whatever they want. It may be too late for that, said a new voice. Every representative turned toward the chamber entrance, where a figure in a simple environmental suit was walking toward the central podium. The suit bore no identifying marks, but something about the purposeful stride was unmistakably human. The figure reached the podium and removed their helmet, revealing the face of Ambassador Sarah Chen. She looked exactly as she had 8 months earlier, but there was something different in her eyes, a confidence that spoke of new knowledge and expanded horizons. Ambassador Chen, Veltar's harmonic voice carried surprised relief. We are grateful for your return. Perhaps we can resume negotiations. I'm not here to negotiate, Sarah interrupted. I'm here to deliver a message. She activated the translation matrix and looked around the chamber at representatives who had once dismissed humanity as useful servants. 8 months ago, you had the opportunity to welcome humanity as equal partners, Sarah said. Instead, you chose to keep us as convenient tools. You've now learned what the galaxy looks like without those tools. We understand our mistake, Kreksnov said, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. Name your terms for resuming cooperation. Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Our terms are simple. There will be no resumption of cooperation. Humanity has found something better. The chamber erupted in confused voices as representatives tried to process her words. Sarah waited for quiet before continuing. While you were treating us as junior partners, we were exploring beyond the edges of charted space. We found worlds richer than anything in this galaxy, with resources you've never imagined and possibilities you've never dreamed of. We're building a civilization that doesn't need your approval or your hierarchy. But the galaxy needs human expertise, Veltar protested. Without your contributions, entire civilizations are collapsing. Then perhaps, Sarah replied, you should have thought of that before deciding we weren't worthy of equal treatment. She looked around the chamber one final time, meeting the gaze of each species representative. You had the most adaptable, innovative, and cooperative species in the galaxy working alongside you, Sarah said. Instead of embracing that partnership, you chose to limit and control us. Now you'll discover what the universe looks like when humans stop being helpful and start being indifferent. Sarah replaced her helmet and turned toward the exit. As she reached the door, she paused and spoke one final message that would haunt the Galactic Assembly for generations to come. In 50 years, when your civilizations have either learned to adapt or fallen into irrelevance, you can try contacting us again. If we're feeling generous, we might consider trade negotiations, but it will be as equals, or not at all. The door closed behind her, leaving 47 species to contemplate a future without the humans they had taken for granted. In the vast silence that followed, each representative began to understand the same terrible truth. They had possessed the key to galactic prosperity and had thrown it away because they were too proud to share power with those they considered beneath them. Outside the station, Sarah's ship disappeared into the darkness between stars, carrying with it the final remnants of humanity's patience with alien arrogance. Behind her, the Galactic Assembly faced a choice: learn to adapt and innovate on their own, or watch their civilizations crumble under the weight of their own limitations. The galaxy had learned what humans were truly capable of, not just their usefulness as tools, but their power when united in purpose and unrestrained by others' expectations. It was a lesson that would reshape the course of galactic history, assuming any of the existing civilizations survived long enough to benefit from it. In the end, the aliens discovered that the most terrifying thing about humans wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their willingness to walk away from those who didn't value them, and their ability to build something better somewhere else.